Hi, my name's Rick, and this is Mr. Rick Talks and Walks, where I'll be sharing a little bit about a place that I'm in and maybe a little bit about myself as well. So come on, take a walk with me. Hello. So, today I'm at City Park in Denver. Um, I was going to tell you about the park and how it's probably the biggest park in Denver. It's a pretty vast park. Um, Beautiful place. Um, Great place to come out and get some sunshine and enjoy the water. But I think I'm going to talk about something else today, and that's that I've been unemployed for the past 11 months, almost 11 months, about 10 and a half months now. I got laid off the end of last August, and I do construction work. I'm a carpenter, and anybody in construction will tell you, looking for a job in construction in the fall and winter, worst time to be looking for a job. And when it happened, I had very little warning. There were kind of signs that it might be coming. I was working for a great big company that was based in Seattle, Washington, and they build houses for rich people all over the country. Seattle or Washington, California, Florida, New York, Hawaii, California. Did I say California? Montana at the Big Sky up at the Billionaires Club. So they do a lot of like really big high-end houses. And was working on a house up in Boulder, Colorado, and $12 million house right up against the foothills. And worked on that for about almost 2 years. And they kept on telling me, yeah, there's going to be more work when this is over. Don't worry about it. We got a couple of contracts we're working on getting started in Denver, one in Denver and one in Boulder, and don't worry, we'll have work for you, blah, blah, blah. And that went on, the entire time I was working for them. And up till the end of this job, they kept on saying the same thing. And then, they let us know that both of those contracts, and the one in Boulder and the one in Denver, they both fell through because they overbid them. And the clients decided they were going to go with a different builder. So they were talking about sending me up to Aspen for a job that they got going. And they were telling me they might send me up to Big Sky to work on the mansions up there. And they kept on stringing me along and telling me everything was fine, it was going to be okay. And then, like the last day of this job up in Boulder, the site superintendent comes up to me and he says, well, Rick, looks like we don't have anything else for you. This is probably going to be your last day. And it's just like, what? You mean you're laying me off? What is this? And he didn't even have any answers for me. He was like, I don't know, you'll have to call my boss. The manager of construction or whatever his title was. But so I called him and talked to him, and he didn't have any answers for me. I'm just like, well, it sounds like I've just been laid off. Could somebody give me some answers? And finally, like 2 or 3 days later, I get a call from the head office, and they tell me, yeah, Rick, you've been laid off. We had to lay you off because we didn't have any other jobs for you to work on. We didn't want to send you up to Aspen because that's in the ground phases right now, and you're a finished carpenter, so we don't really have any use for you up there. So yeah, they laid me off, sent me the paperwork for unemployment insurance and 401k. And so, I'm panicked, of course. I'm 56 years old. Not easy for a guy my age to find more work. So I got on unemployment and cashed out the little bit of 401k that I had and started looking for a job. And so yeah, like I said, I'm in a complete panic at this point. But anyway, I signed up for unemployment and started collecting that. And it's, if you've ever been on unemployment, it's like a third of what you normally make. It's not even close to what you're used to getting paid. But so I started sending out resumes, and I mean, all told, during the whole 6 months of unemployment, I probably sent out 150 resumes. Got very few calls back. Most of the time they just either not send any notice or anything like that, or they would just send a letter saying, sorry, we decided to go with someone else. Thanks for your resume. And I had a few interviews for jobs, but they were either paying hardly anything, paying wages that I'd surpassed that 10, 15, 20 years ago. And I'm not gonna sell myself short like that. And then other interviews I went on where, again, they decided to go with someone else. And I fully suspect that it probably has more to do with my age than anything, because I've got over 30 years of experience doing construction work. Got a ton of knowledge, ton of skill. My age and the amount of money that I wanted to get paid. They just weren't willing to pay anybody what they're worth. So that went on for the entire 6 months that I was on unemployment. And during that time, I started drinking really heavily. Just trying to shut it out, get it out of my head. And drinking, smoking weed. At first, I wouldn't start drinking until afternoon. After there was a possibility that someone might call me and ask me to come to an interview or whatever. But eventually, I started drinking in the morning when I got up, and I would have a few beers and smoke some weed, check the wanted ads, job listings on Indeed and Craigslist and LinkedIn and whatnot. And it was just nothing. It was like dead. Like I said, trying to look for a construction job in the fall and winter it's like a curse. There's nothing. So yeah, I'm drinking heavily, getting pretty much sloshed every night of the week. And that went on for a few months. And eventually I started doom scrolling and watching YouTube videos that were talking about the end of the world and how nothing's going to get any better. And you better arm yourself and get ready for the end and all that stuff. So I went out and I bought a couple of pew-pews, just to make sure I was defended, safe, and taking care of what I needed to do. And at that time, I figured, well, if I'm going to own these, I better quit drinking, because it's probably more likely that I'm going to use them on myself than anybody else. And so I quit drinking. And I quit smoking weed because, it's a federal offense to own one of those and be smoking marijuana. It's paranoid. Even though people like Joe Rogan, Bill Maher, and all these famous people, they all smoke weed in public on their podcasts and whatnot. Nobody ever does anything to them, but I figured, it'd be just my luck that they'd come crashing down on me and I'd end up spending 10 years in federal pen because of something stupid like that. So I cut out all the drinking, cut out all the smoking, started eating healthy, started trying to get myself back in shape because, my body was just racked from all the working, and I quit smoking cigarettes probably like a year before that, maybe a little bit longer, because I could hardly breathe anymore. But anyway, I was, starting to look out for myself, starting to clear my head, starting to try and figure out what else I wanted to do, because this whole construction thing didn't seem to be working out anymore. And so I was looking into shit like day trading and internet businesses and stuff, and working from home and things. I was going that route. Again, just kind of panicked, not knowing what to do next. Which is, it's kind of the reason why I'm doing these videos, these YouTube videos, because I don't know what else to do. I'm at a loss, and to be honest, I never really enjoyed doing construction work. It was just something I kind of had to do, because I was, I started doing construction work when I was 15 years old, and then it was off and on through high school, and then I went into the military for about 6 years. Figured out that was a fucking huge mistake. So got out of the military and came back home. And I was actually, I lived in Illinois, so I went back to Illinois and quickly realized that there wasn't really any kind of life for me in there in Illinois. So I packed up my shit and moved out to Colorado. And anyway, that's a long story. Maybe I'll tell you about it some other time. But anyway, I eventually ended up in Denver. Started going to school and working odd jobs, bussing tables and stuff, and was going to school for theater, trying to get into acting. And things went well for a while. I was doing shows and getting picked up for plays without having to audition and stuff. People just started noticing me. So, and at that time when I was going to school, I met my ex-wife, and we got pregnant. So I kind of had to put aside the acting thing and get a real job that I could support a family on. So that got me into construction again, because it was something I knew I could do, something I was good at, something that I knew would pay the bills. But so yeah, that's how I got into really like full-time construction work. I was probably, at that point I was 28, 29, 30 years old, something like that. And been doing it ever since. And not that I really enjoyed it. Always hated doing it. Always hated having to roll out of bed no matter what weather was like, no matter, whether I felt well or not. Because, bosses, they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit what the weather's like. In construction work, it don't matter if it's pouring rain, if it's snowing, if it's blazing hot out. It don't matter. You got to go to work. And I hated it. I hated being in that kind of a, lifestyle where I didn't have a choice about anything. But I did it anyway. And I did it faithfully. And, it seemed like every year or two, I was always looking for another job because either the business I was working for started turning into a shit show. And they found a way to either push me out, get me to quit, or they'd fire me. And every year or two. It was only one time that I actually had a construction job that I sort of enjoyed, and that was when I was working on Earthships down in New Mexico, in Taos. That was a pretty cool job. Worked with a great bunch of dudes. Girls too, I mean, there were girls and guys on the crew. And we traveled. I went to different countries to build houses, and built houses in different states. But I did that for 8 or 9 years, and then my marriage started to fall apart. It's funny, there's a saying in Taos, move to Taos and lose your spouse. It happened. I lost my spouse. So anyway, that's kind of another story. I was just not really in the game anymore. My head wasn't in it. And I started coming back up to Denver every weekend. And I was working on a show that I had wrote with a couple of my friends, and it was like a week-long show that I came up to Denver for a week and did this show. And I told everybody that I was working with down in Taos that I was coming up here to do this show. But I came up, finished the show, did the show, finished it, went back down to Taos, and the owner of the company, the boss, he says, "You didn't tell me anything. You didn't tell me you were leaving, so I'm firing you. I can't depend on you." But it had more to do with the things than that, because I just wasn't really doing my job very well at the time because of everything that was happening. But so yeah, he fired me, and started growing weed to try and pay the bills. I mean, it was illegal in New Mexico at the time, and it was dangerous, and I was putting my family at risk, and wasn't really making a lot of money at it. I loved doing it. I mean, growing weed is really fun. If you ever get a chance to, it's fun. But that didn't last very long. Probably a couple of years I did that, and just a lot of pressure, just the fear of getting busted, and it's a lot of work. When you're growing a lot of plants, it's a lot of work. It's fun work, but it is a lot of work. It's a full-time job. It's definitely not easy. And then trying to sell the stuff is sketchy as hell. When it's illegal, it's a completely different animal than trying to do it legally. So anyway, I left Taos, had to get away from the ex-wife because it was driving me nuts just being around her. So I came back up to Denver and started doing construction work again. And I worked for various different companies. And it always ended the same way. Either the boss started turning into a complete asshole, or the work just started to grind me down. And I'd last a year or two at a job, and I'd either get fired or quit, or the company would go out of business or whatever. And it's this wheel, this hamster wheel, that I can't do it anymore. So I'm made up my mind now. I'm just not going to do this shit anymore. I'm not going to be somebody else's slave. I'm not going to be busting my ass day in, day out, just to make somebody else's dreams come true, make somebody else rich. I've had it. I'm not going to do it anymore. And so yeah, that's where I'm at. That's why I'm making these videos. That's why I'm looking into doing other things. During the whole time of being unemployed, I fell into a romance scam. Got ripped off for about $8,000. That's another story. I can tell you that some other time if you want to hear about it. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear me tell that story. What a shit show. I mean, I can't believe it. So long story short, that if you ever meet anybody online and they tell you that they love you, and then they try and convince you to get into cryptocurrency, don't do it. Get away, walk away, get away from it. Don't do it. You're gonna get scammed. So that's all I'm gonna say about that for right now. Like I said, let me know in the comments if you want me to talk more about that. But that's a crazy story all by itself. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And I'm at City Park in Denver. It's an awesome place. Come out, enjoy the park. But I suppose that's it for now. You know, do the thing. Hit the like button, subscribe if you want to hear more of this kind of stuff. And you know, to all those people who might be listening, I just want to say I love you. Thanks for watching. I mean it. I really love you. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.